I'm Adrian Saville. Thanks for joining me on our lockdown vlog. If you're counting, it's day 11. First, to everyone who is following us, thanks for the engagement, the interaction. Our numbers are up materially over the past week, and it's valuable feedback to us that we're giving something useful to you. From our followers on LinkedIn, Twitter, and email, a chart, a RAND question, and an investment response in today's vlog. First, the chart. I borrow here from Fact Today, who shares a tale of two cities in this morning's email. And they show that during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, two US cities had a very different response to the outbreak. St. Louis cancelled all events and gatherings after discovering its first cases, while Philadelphia went ahead with a military parade attended by 200,000 people. The result for Philadelphia, they had a cumulative death rate over the period of 719 deaths per 100,000 population. By comparison, St. Louis, a cumulative death rate of half of that, 347 per 100,000. They flattened the curve, and this shows exactly how dramatically the peak number of deaths can be affected by social distancing. Then the currency. Simon Brown, in a Twitter response yesterday, said, "Come on, people, we've seen this before. The rand blowing out," was what he was referring to. I also made that point to you in our vlog the day before yesterday in talking about the early 2000s, global financial crisis, Nenegate, and now. The response to both Simon and my observation is, but hang on, now is different. We've got global systemic economic shutdown, and we've got South Africa in crisis, having been downgraded to sub-investment and further sub-investment by Moody's and Fitch, respectively. So the argument is it's very different for South Africa at this time. And yes, it is different for South Africa this time. But I want to show you two further pieces of evidence to sort of add to this argument that we have seen this before, or we're not in this on our own. The first chart is the sell-off in British sterling versus the US dollar. That's the black line. The blue line is the rand versus US dollar. And although sterling hasn't sold off as spectacularly as rand, it's quite clear that sterling has sold off. And that suggests that some part of this rand response is not only rand weakness, it's actually dollar strength. To make that point even sharper, let me give you another chart. The orange column is the Brazilian reais. This is the Brazilian currency selling off even deeper than the rand over this period, which tells us in breakup language, it's not me, it's you. So there is a part of this that is unquestionably emerging market and more specifically rand and reais weakness. But there is a part of it that is dollar strength. How much is dollar strength? Well, if we look at the DXY, which is the US dollar index, the ticker is DXY, quite quaint. But if we look at the DXY, I would suggest that about 10% of this is dollar strength rather than rand weakness. In other words, going back to Haley's point of Friday or Saturday, perhaps as much as 2 rand of the rand dollar move can be put down to dollar strength rather than rand weakness. And this reminds me, Kumi Governor, my colleague, reminds me of the Plaza Accord, where in 1985, heads of banking from France, West Germany, Japan, the UK, and the US met at the Plaza Hotel in New York to discuss the problem of systemic dollar strength. And they put in place policies to systematically weaken the US dollar against all major currencies. And it begs the question, could this be a Plaza Accord moment? And then the third talking point for today is the investment question. From Dan and others, should I carry on contributing to my RA? Should I switch investments in this time of market turbulence? Well, John Maynard Keynes showed us that timing the market is exceptionally hard. You might go down as one of the best economists of the past 100 years. You might have the extraordinary investment experience that Keynes had across equities, bonds, property, and commodities. And you might have access to extraordinary data. These were all at Keynes's fingertips. But he showed us that timing the market is incredibly hard, as evidenced by his poor efforts at trying to time his investment through the Great Depression of the late 1920s and into the 1930s. He consistently got it wrong. And what Keynes shows us is that one of the best things that you can do in times like this is stay the course. Stay invested and stay with your RA pension fund or any other investment strategy that you've got going. Data from Morningstar shows us that attempts to time the manager by clients converts a manager's investment return or reduces a manager's investment return by as much as 2.5% per annum. So going in and out of the fund manager in an attempt to try and get it right and allocate at the right moment over a 10-year period takes as much as 2.5% out of your portfolio. Compound that, 2.5% per annum over 10 years, it works out at a 25% loss on your portfolio. In other words, what you are quietly causing by this in and out activity is your own private crash to your investment portfolio. Stop doing it. Stay invested would be the guidance and the suggestion. The other piece of evidence or argument here about why you shouldn't be trying to time comes from Morningstar. And Morningstar makes the point that using 6,000 days of data, that over these 6,000 days, if you get invested and stay invested, you get a 14% return. That's not a bad result. However, if you miss the 25 best days, your return goes from 14% to 7%. You don't want to miss the 25 best days. You also don't want the worst days. And what we're trying to avoid by timing is we're trying to stay away from the worst days. So if you stay away from the 25 worst days, the gray line goes to the black line. But if you miss the 25 best days, the black line goes to the red line. It's a staggering result that avoiding the worst days takes you to a result that is still a 14% return per annum. Avoiding the 25 best days takes you from 14 to 7. And the complication is that in times like this, the best days are followed by the worst days. They're all crowded together. So not only must you be good at timing, you must be pinpoint precise in your timing. The suggestion is stay the course. The challenge in this environment is we are fed and fueled by fear and greed. The fear comes from the amygdala, which rushes in with this flight mode, and the greed, well, there is an opportunity, I can grab something, I can seize the moment. That comes from the nuclear incumbents. And the good news in this is we've all got this. We're all human, and we've all got those same emotions. The challenge for us as investors is to recognize those behavioral responses and to manage them. So your chance of making money on any one day is 50-50. If you start to manage this fear and greed and stay the course and go the distance, you turn this 50-50 into 75-25 and perhaps even 100-0. These are some behavioral clues, some evidence to feed the argument. And as a last point, I promised yesterday some silver lining to share with you the news that the Woolworths board has announced a 30% reduction in their salaries, and that they will use all of those savings at the board and executive level to look after people, their staff, who have been hurt during this crisis. A Gibbs alumni, Rick Diesel, he's a doctor. He's at home working on COVID-19 tests. And a client of ours in the UK shares this news with us. She says, the reporting and the news on South Africa and the way that we are managing the lockdown and Cyril Ramaphosa, we are receiving exceptionally good coverage. And she speaks about the confidence, the conviction, and the leadership that is being displayed through the reporting on South Africa. I think those are some pieces of good news, hopefully some investment guidance, some evidence and some perspective on the Rand in today's vlog. Please keep sending and sharing. Please stay safe, stay sane, stay home. As John Bogle would say, stay the course. See you tomorrow.